What if you are an artist and you don't know it? And welcome back to a Better Philosophy Towards Art podcast. In this episode, we will be talking about a better philosophy towards making art. As you might have heard in the previous episode, we spoke about creating art. I am trying to distinguish between creating art and making art. Let me try to simplify these two terms for you. If creating art is an erratic process, making art is a more tame process. Creating art could happen at any time. It could be provoked by random instances in life, and it could have any method or medium. It's something that most people would have done at some point of their time, of their life, but not called it a work of art. For example, a very random example is a person near a lake throwing flat stones on water and trying to get the stones to bounce multiple times. Now, if he finds some sort of meaning in it, he is expressing himself through that as a form of art. But he might not go back home or to his friends and proclaim that he created something which is worthy of the term art. That's because we don't see it. We don't apply the perspective of calling anything art in terms of we are not taught to call things art. That's what I have come to realize. Art is, in its most essential form, a medium of self-expression, and we can find self-expression in our own daily moments. So even while buying a bus ticket, if we are cultivating the art of smiling back to the bus conductor, that is, in its truest form, an art in itself. You are deliberately expressing gratitude of some sort by smiling back. And maybe that's going unnoticed or you don't publicly speak about it. But that does not deny you from the fact that you have created some sort of art. You have created a self-expression of your own. Now, let me talk about making art. Making art is more registered. Like, let's say it's a more advanced and more thought of area you're dwelling in. It's somewhat understood, like you know the medium, you know what you're going to do. Maybe let's take an example of kite flying, where you make a kite in a certain way, you tie the thread, and from a nice location you fly the kite with your skill. So you have a certain outcome in mind, that the kite must fly a certain way. There's a certain technique I'm going to use to get the kite in the air, and I'm going to fly it for around 30 minutes or 45 minutes. Maybe have a fight in the air and chase the kite after it gets cut. You're going to have some sort of idea of what you're doing, which is not the case in creating art. That's why I feel that a lot of creations are gone unnoticed, because making is the next step in this process of art. We create things with inspiration, or when we are provoked, or when we feel a tingle, and is something that may materialize or may not materialize. But if it is well noticed, if we have enough awareness, we can take some content of that creation and put it into the second process, which is called making. In making, we give it more shape, we give it more form. Imagine a dough of clay taken out from a wet pit with no shape or form. That in itself is a creation. Now, we are not going to call it art because we are not taught to call it art, but in itself, just as we take it out from the pit, it is a creation. Now, when we apply more thought into it and give it more life, we have an idea of where we want, what kind of shapes we want that clay to take. That we call making. That's what is making. So when we make something, we are applying some more thought. And one of the perspectives I want to put into this episode is that making art requires some amount of talent. When we talk about talent in art, people have a common question that does art require talent? Well, creating art does not require talent. Creating art is raw self-expression. But making art does require talent. Because after a certain amount of awareness, you realize that you're inclined towards some activities and you are not going to be as inclined towards other activities, which is perfectly normal. We're all built differently. So when you have an inclination towards certain activities, that is what is a broad definition of the word talent. So with that talent, you make art. Like you use your skills in talent, you use your awareness of yourself and you apply it to a medium. For example, I use my awareness of visual graphics to make a very good graphic design. So my talent would be understanding visual graphics, and I use that to make a nice graphic design, right? Another perspective is that we get disappointed in this process of making art. Another perspective I'd like to talk about is the wow effect. And this is a very peculiar trait of making art. You might not find it in creating art or doing art that much, because while you're creating art, you're seldom thinking about what's happening. And while you're doing art, you are advised not to think at all. However, while you're making art, you're supposed to think and build something. So here's where people want to make the most astounding works. They want to make works that get eyes popping. And that's the wow effect. I would say that we shouldn't get too disappointed by this wow effect, and we shouldn't undermine ourselves or our talent because of the wow effect. The wow effect is a very transitory term, and it is defined by external factors, I would say. We are not in control of the wow effect. All we are in control of is making something to a degree we are satisfied with. Like if we know we have put our best, if we know we have utilized our talents to an optimum, to our best, I think sometime down the line we will feel a wow effect for what we have created or made. The disappointments in the process are always temporary, even though they feel unending. And this, as an artist, I have faced. But the correct perspective is that the disappointments are temporary. So let's talk about a better perspective towards making art. Playfulness is a better perspective towards making art. When you're playful, you take in all the disappointments and the setbacks and the pitfalls as part of the game, as part of the play. You know it's predestined that you're going to fall. It's predestined that bad things are going to happen. And it's all accepted in the same path as success, victory, and joy. So the fact that something didn't come out the way you want is as much as a victory as when something does turn out the way you like. Because we are all trying to manifest our energies to create something, right? Or make something. And it is not necessary that it turns out the way we want. That's the learning curve in the whole path, in the whole process to make art. So when we are playful, it indicates that we are willing to take a fall and get up again. It keeps the element of surprise available. And that's what makes the process very joyful. This is the same reason why art is taught to young children, because they're full of joy and wonder, and they like to be surprised at every corner of their day. I hope that this podcast gave some insight to you. I tried to give you great perspective on making art. In the next podcast episode, I'll be speaking about a better philosophy towards doing art. I'll be differentiating between making art, doing art, and it's going to be another episode in a better philosophy towards art podcast. See you again. Thank you for listening to a better philosophy towards art podcast. This podcast has been crafted at Manicpod Studios in Chembur, Mumbai. Your sound engineers are Rohit Das and Mainak Chakraborty. Your producers are Vedant Naik and Arnav Dogra. Don't forget to check out my Instagram page in the description below, and also give manicpod a follow for more fun podcasting content. See you in the next episode.